Okay, so hiatal hernias occur when the upper part of the stomach moves above the diaphragm, and it actually moves into the chest. So that's really when you need a chiropractor. Chiropractors they're amazing. And hopefully those of you listening out there, you've got a really good one, and a really good one that you can trust, because there's a lot of times, even for fever, chiropractors work really, really well. So, and people who have hiatal hernias, they deal with a lot of severe chest pain and stomach aches and pain so intense that it feels like they're having a heart attack. Well, that upper part of the stomach is called the cardia, and that's the entrance level into the stomach, and it's even with the heart. So from a nerve reflex standpoint, that's where you get that sensation of you almost feel like you're having a heart attack. That has to do with nerve supply flow. So if you juice or you consume raw food, 75% of digestion can take place up in the fundus area of the stomach. That is the next area right below the cardia. And this is where the raw food is digested, in that fundus. So if you juice, eat fresh vegetables and fruits, a lot of this digestion takes place there in that fundus area. And then it's mixed, it's ground up pretty good. It's mixed with enzymes, and it's held there, and then it's slowly released down into what's called the body of the stomach. And that, if you look at a diagram of the stomach, that's the largest wide portion of the stomach. And that's where the hydrochloric acid and the pepsin is at, and that's where it's working at full force. And hydrochloric acid and pepsin really work on breaking down the protein and breaking that into smaller molecules that are convert into amino acids. And then the amino acids, we can be deficient in certain amino acids. That's why it's really important that vegetarians, this is where the mixture of the grains and beans take place, so that they can have a good variety of amino acids from that protein that breaks down into amino acids. So it's what those properties of those foods, from a macronutrient standpoint, what that particular food delivers. And there's protein in both of them. And so when you combine them, you get a wider variety of more amino acids protein that will break down into amino acids. Hemp protein, really when you look at, I'll take hemp protein over whey protein.
Any day of the week.
I'll take hemp protein over soy.
Any day of the week.
Yeah, I mean, soy is just really questionable. And, it's said with the GMO that our corn, all of the corn, I mean, if you're not getting corn from somebody that grew it in their backyard from heirloom seed, you're more than likely eating a genetically modified corn.
Right. It's just getting to that point.
It is. So, and soy is right there with it. Okay, so hemp protein provides all of your essential amino acids. And when you have all of your essential amino acids, then your body will make the non-essentials. So, but you have to have that full spectrum. Okay, so, so the body area of the stomach, that's where a lot of the protein digestion takes place. That's where the greatest amount of the hydrochloric acid and pepsin is found. So that moves it into the last part of the stomach, the bottom part, the antrum. And that's where it's held, and it's slowly released into the duodenum through the bottom valve of the stomach, which is called the pyloric valve. Okay, so after the stomach has completed the digestive work, the chyme enters the small intestine through the pyloric valve. And then the small intestine is also kind of divided into three areas as well. The duodenum, which is attached to the lower end of the stomach at that pyloric valve, right below the pyloric valve. It looks like, if you look at a diagram, it looks like the letter C. It is 10 inches long, the duodenum. And so that's the very top first part of the small intestine. The next is the duodenum. And that is 8 feet long. So it moves through that tube that's 8 feet long, and it goes into the 12 feet of the ileum. Now, the ileum is where it joins the large intestine at the. It meets up at the right side of the body, the pelvic area, on the right side of the body at a right angle. That bottom of the ileum attaches then. Under extreme pressure that goes on there, it attaches to the ileocecal valve. And that ileocecal valve works as another valve, another sphincter muscle valve that closes tight, so that once everything that's been digested down through the stomach and through the small intestines, and it's pulled all those nutrients out of there, it goes into the large intestine, and that closes. You don't want anything from that large intestine, because that's metabolic waste by that point. There's not a whole lot of nutrient, small amount of some digestion. That's, the final end of it. But you don't want any of that waste coming back up into the small intestine. So people who have had their appendix removed, because that's right next to the ileocecal, is you don't want to have an enema, because what that will do is, if you're missing your appendix, that will backwash that into the small intestine, and the small intestines absorb nutrients, and that's what gets absorbed in through the capillaries and gets delivered to the bloodstream, and then the bloodstream takes it and delivers it to the cell. So we'll talk about auto-intoxication. And, there's a lot of things that can cause auto-intoxication, and that's certainly one of them. So,
goodness.
Yeah. So, okay, so we've got the large intestine that at a right angle meets up with the ileocecal valve. That ileocecal valve is, a guard at that junction to prevent reabsorption of the waste back up into the large intestine. The greatest amount of digestion and absorption takes place in the small intestine. There's approximately 4.5 million little teeny tiny villi. They're like little hair-like small fingers. They project from the wall of the intestine in the small intestine, and it's these small little villi that each projection encloses a central lymphatic channel. Okay, the lymph system is involved.
Is villi?
It's a little hair-like fiber that.
Is that found in other parts of the body as well?
In the
lungs,
I
just wanted to make sure, because I had to have mine cut on my spinal cord that was holding my main vein and arteries. My main vein and artery had to be cut from my spine, and so they had to cut the villi without. They were trying not to cut any of the tops of them, but it didn't work, because they said that a few of them got cut. And
well, the villi is the little hair-like fiber that lines things, and this is where it pulls into it, like with the lungs, blood and oxygen.
Okay, I was just wondering if it was the same.
Yeah, the villi.
Gotcha. So
what that does is, to each of those little the villi, what ends up happening is it's enclosed with the lymphatic central lymph system, and it's a vessel that's surrounded by a network of minute little blood vessels, which are capillaries. Okay. And so when that chyme comes through the small intestine, so it's that's everything that's all finely chewed up, it's liquid, it's broke down to a point where the nutrients that are present in that food, this is where your food's your medicine. The food that's all broken down and digested, the chyme, what it's done, and it being in a liquid source, it's absorbed into these central lymph channels, that in turn the lymph channel then moves it in through the network of the blood vessels, the capillaries, and then those capillaries pass it into the passing through the villi, is absorbed into the cell. So there's numerous, as well as this little villi, there's numerous intestinal glands that are covering the wall of the small intestine also. So, it's just not this tube that the food just, flies on through. There's a lot of major stuff going on here. And
well, so far it's traveled 20 feet.
It's
and we just got to the large intestine.
It's quite the ways. It is quite the ways. So, these glands that cover the wall, of the small intestine, they secrete mucus. They secrete a release of alkaline digestive fluids that are really, very, very high in enzymes. And these glands, they also secrete hormones. And those hormones are what help the thymus gland control the flow of juices from the pancreas, the gallbladder, and the liver. So that's all happening and going on. So in the small intestine. So the large intestine is much wider than the small intestine, and it's 5 feet long. And there's 4 parts to that, but there's 4 parts, but there's also 3 flexures where it curves. And so the 4 parts to the large intestine is the cecum, where the appendix is attached to the colon, and then the rectum, and then the anal canal. And the colon is a continuous tube, and it's subdivided into 3 parts. There's the 3 parts along with the 3 flexure points. So if you go to the right side of your body, say from the hip, and follow up, 3 or 4 inches off, a couple inches or so off to your belly button, over to the right, down to like where your hip is at, that is the ascending colon. So that right side of the abdomen is the ascending colon, where the food coming from the small intestine, it's still liquid. Then it makes a curve right at about even with the belly button, and actually a little higher than the belly button. And when it makes that curve, that first curve on that right side is called the hepatic flexure. So it's easy to remember that your liver's on the right side. That first curve is that hepatic flexure. Then it moves into going straight across the abdominal area, and that's called the transverse colon. And things are still pretty much liquid as it's going through the transverse colon. And people can have a lot of problems with the transverse colon. And I'll talk about that when I get done with this. I want to get into some of touch base a little more on the pancreas and the liver.